Welcome to The Explainer. We're diving into a really fascinating idea today. What if an ancient allegory, one that's thousands of years old, actually predicted one of the biggest turning points in modern history? Yep, we're talking about the discovery of America. So, let's get right into it. How exactly is this connection made? We're going to unpack a specific passage from the Book of Mormon and see how its really intricate metaphors are interpreted to point directly, and I mean directly, to the year 1492. Okay, so the foundation for this whole interpretation is built on a story, an allegory, from an ancient prophet named Zenos. On the surface, it's a story about an olive tree. But as you're about to see, it's about so much more than that. As you can see right here from Jacob chapter 5, the story kicks off by comparing the house of Israel to a tame olive tree. Now, to really get what's going on here, we have to understand what all these symbols mean. It's like learning the key to a code. First up, we've got the tame olive tree itself. Pretty straightforward. This represents the entire house of Israel, who are known as God's covenant people. Next, there's the vineyard where the tree is planted. You can think of this as the setting for the whole drama. It represents the entire world. And the one in charge, the gardener, if you will, is the master of the vineyard. The source material identifies this figure as Christ. And finally, we have the branches of the tree. These stand for different groups of people, different nations, and family lines. So when you put it all together, you realize this isn't just a story about horticulture. No way. It's a grand allegory for God's relationship with all the nations of the world, all told through the life of this one tree. All right, so now that we know the key players, let's see where the story goes. And, well, it gets pretty dark. The allegory describes a time of serious crisis for the tree. According to Jacob chapter 5, the main tree, which is Israel, it became wicked. It started to decay from the inside out. And this isn't just a minor issue. It's a huge problem that sets the stage for a pretty dramatic intervention from the master of the vineyard. So, faced with this decay, what does the master do? He takes some drastic action. Instead of just letting the whole tree rot, he decides to save what he can. He takes some of the natural branches and scatters them all over his vineyard, the entire world, hoping to preserve them. And this is where the allegory gets really interesting, because the source material connects this symbolic scattering to actual historical events. You can see it on the timeline here. It's linked to things like the Assyrian conquest that scattered ancient Israel, and even a migration of a group all the way to the Americas around 600 BC. It's all about establishing these branches far from their original home. But after a really long time passes, the master goes to check on his work, and he finds a complete disaster. The entire vineyard, every tree, every branch, everywhere has gone bad. It's all producing corrupt fruit. And in Jacob chapter 5, he just weeps, crying out, "What could I have done more for my vineyard?" He thinks all his work has been for nothing. But right as he's about to give up, to destroy the whole vineyard, his servant steps in and pleads with him, "Spare it a little longer." This plea, right here in Jacob chapter 5, sets up one final massive attempt to save the vineyard, a last-ditch plan for gathering and restoration. And that brings us to the climax of the whole story, and really the heart of our explainer today. How on earth would this final, desperate attempt to save the vineyard actually work? Well, the plan comes down to one key technique: grafting. You know, where you take a branch from one tree and splice it onto another one, hoping that this new combination will finally start producing good fruit. In Jacob chapter 5, verse 54, the master lays out his new plan, and the interpretation here is absolutely crucial. The source suggests this means taking branches from the main tree, representing European peoples who still had some belief in Christ, even if it had gone wild or become corrupted, and grafting them into those other trees that had been scattered across the world. And then, boom, the very next verse describes the action taking place. Now here it is. This is the pivotal connection we've been building up to. The source interprets this act of grafting not just as a metaphor, but as a direct prophecy of the great migration of peoples from Europe to other parts of the world, most notably to the Americas. And the source material pins the timing of this allegorical event to a single world-changing year, 1492. This marks the beginning of sustained European contact with the Americas, an event that completely kicked off a new era of global interaction. This table here just lays out the core interpretation perfectly. You can see exactly how the allegorical action of grafting branches from that wild natural tree in Europe onto the other wild trees is seen as a direct parallel to the historical event of European migration and settlement in the Americas. So what's the big takeaway here? What does all this mean? Well, this interpretation completely recasts a massive turning point in history. It suggests it wasn't just an accident or driven purely by economics, but that it was a deliberate, foretold event in a much larger divine story. It reframes the entire age of discovery as a prophesied step in a plan to ultimately heal the world. So it leaves us with this question: what does it mean to view history not just as a series of events, but as the unfolding of a story written long, long ago?